I learned it from a boy with glasses, a lightning scar, and a story that changed my life. When I opened Harry Potter for the first time, I didn't even understand half the words. But I didn't stop. I kept reading. And what happened next completely changed my English. Stay with me till the end, because what I discovered might change the way you learn forever. Chapter 1: The First Page of Magic. When I opened the book for the first time, I had no idea that it would change my life. I was sitting on my bed, the light was dim, and the book felt heavy in my hands. The words looked strange and unfamiliar. My heart was full of excitement but also fear. Could I really understand this? Could I read a whole book in English? I was not sure. But something inside me said, "Try. Just try." And that was the moment when my real English journey began. The first page of Harry Potter was not easy. I read slowly. Sometimes I stopped after every sentence. Some words looked impossible. I didn't know their meanings, and for a second, I wanted to close the book. But then I looked at the cover again. I saw the boy with glasses. I saw the world of magic waiting for me, and I decided to go on. Maybe I didn't understand everything, but I could still feel something. I could feel the story pulling me in like a spell. I started reading one line at a time. I didn't try to translate every word. I just wanted to know what was happening. I focused on the feeling, not the grammar. When I saw the word owl, I imagined a bird flying in the dark. When I saw letter, I thought of a message. Slowly, I understood. Not every detail, but the meaning behind the words. It was like walking in fog. You can't see everything, but you can still move forward. Each new word was a little light in that fog. The word wizard, the word wand, the word magic, they became part of my world. I wrote them down in a small notebook. I didn't just memorize them. I said them out loud. I whispered them to myself. I used them in my thoughts. Soon, they didn't feel strange anymore. They felt like friends. The funny thing was, the more I read, the more confident I became. My eyes started moving faster. My brain began to understand without thinking too much. I started to guess meanings from the story itself. And when I guessed right, it felt amazing. That small victory made me smile. I realized that I didn't need to know every word to enjoy English. I just needed to keep reading. There were times I failed. There were days I got tired. But then I remembered the world waiting inside that book. Hogwarts, magic, friendship, adventure. Every time I opened the book, it felt like visiting another country. A country where English was alive and full of wonder. I wasn't just learning vocabulary, I was living inside it. I learned that real improvement doesn't happen in one day. It happens slowly, page by page. Every time I turned a page, I learned something new about the language and about myself. I learned patience. I learned focus. I learned that even when things look hard, they can still be beautiful. Reading Harry Potter didn't feel like studying. It felt like traveling. The story carried me forward. I laughed. I felt afraid. I felt excited. And without noticing, my English was getting better. My vocabulary was growing. My pronunciation improved because I started reading aloud. My imagination became my teacher. There was one evening I will never forget. I was reading a part of the story where Harry gets his letter from Hogwarts. I understood everything, every single word. I didn't stop to translate. I didn't need to check a dictionary. I was just reading and feeling every line. My heart was racing. I had done it. I understood English directly. It felt like flying. That moment changed me. It showed me that learning English is not about perfection. It's about connection. When you feel the story, when you live the words, the language becomes part of you. You stop being afraid. You start enjoying every sentence. And that is how the magic begins. If you are afraid to start reading in English, remember this. You don't need to be perfect to begin. You just need curiosity. Start with one page. Read slowly. Feel every word. Don't rush. Every page will give you something. A new word, a new feeling, a little more courage, and one day, you'll look back and realize your English has changed completely. When I closed the book that night, I smiled. I wasn't just reading Harry Potter, I was reading myself. My fear, my growth, my dream. That first page of magic was not just in the book, it was in me, and it can be in you too. So keep your book close. Open your heart. Let every word become a light, because every sentence you read in English is another step toward your own magic. Chapter 2: How Words Became My Friends. At first, English words felt like strangers to me. I saw them, I tried to remember them, but they disappeared so fast. They looked difficult, strange, and cold. But something changed when I started reading Harry Potter. The words were no longer just black letters on a white page. They had color. They had sound. They had emotion. They started to come alive. Slowly, they became my friends. When you read a story, you don't just read words, you feel them. I didn't learn the word brave from a list. I learned it when Harry stood up to danger. I didn't learn the word loyal from a grammar book. I learned it when Ron stayed beside his friends, even when things were hard. These words came with feelings. They came with meaning, and that's why I never forgot them. In every chapter, the same words appeared again and again: magic, spell, castle, fear, hope. They were like old friends coming to visit. At first, I needed time to understand them, but soon, when I saw them again, I smiled. I knew them now. They weren't strange anymore. They were part of my story. This repetition made my brain stronger. It built memory without pain. I didn't even notice I was learning. I was just enjoying the story. Sometimes I used to pause and whisper the new words aloud. Wand, I said softly. Cloak, whisper. I loved how they sounded. English started to feel like music. Some words were soft, some were strong, some made me laugh, some made me dream. The more I read, the more I wanted to speak. I started using those words in my thoughts. I would think, today, I will be brave like Harry, or I will stay loyal like Ron. English wasn't a school subject anymore. It became a language of my heart. What surprised me most was how my memory started working naturally. When I learned words from books, they stayed longer in my mind. Why? Because they had a story. If someone said the word spell, I didn't just think of a meaning. I remembered Hermione shouting a spell in the Great Hall. When I heard fear, I remembered how Harry faced his darkest moments. These pictures stayed in my head, and every time I read, my imagination made the learning stronger. I also noticed that words began to connect to each other. Brave connected to strong, fear connected to fight, hope connected to light. It felt like building a web of meaning inside my brain. English was not a list of words anymore. It was a living world, a world I could walk in, a world that spoke back to me. There were days when I still got confused. Sometimes I met long words that scared me, but I didn't stop. I reminded myself that even difficult words become friendly if you meet them again and again. It's just like meeting people. The first time, you don't know them. The second time, you feel shy. But after a few meetings, they become friends. Words are exactly like that. Reading Harry Potter every day was like spending time with those friends. They told me stories. They taught me lessons. They gave me new power. I began to trust them. I didn't need a dictionary all the time. I learned to guess meaning from the story. And when I guessed right, I felt proud. That small pride kept me reading more and more. Now, when I look back, I see that learning vocabulary is not about memorizing. It's about connecting. When you love a word, it stays. When you use it, it grows. When you feel it, it becomes part of you. English words are not cold or distant. They are alive. They just need your attention and care. Every learner should know this truth. Words want to be your friends. Don't chase them. Don't force them. Read stories. Feel emotions. Let them come to you. When you smile, they will stay. When you care, they will help you speak. And one day, you will realize you are surrounded by hundreds of English friends who understand you perfectly. That is how it happened for me. I started with confusion, I continued with curiosity, and I ended with friendship. The words that once scared me now speak through me. And that, my friend, is the real magic of learning English through stories. Chapter 3. The Moment I Understood Without Translating. There comes a time in every learner's life when something magical happens. You are reading, your eyes move from line to line, and suddenly you realize something. You are not translating anymore. You are not thinking in your first language. You are just understanding. That moment feels like the door to another world has quietly opened. And when I reached that moment while reading Harry Potter, it felt like pure magic. I still remember it clearly. It was a rainy evening. I was reading a chapter where Harry was walking alone in the dark hallway of Hogwarts. I was turning each page slowly, trying to catch every word. Then suddenly I realized I had been reading for 5 pages without using my dictionary. I didn't even stop once, and I understood everything. Every word, every feeling, every image. My heart started beating faster. I sat back and smiled. I couldn't believe it. I had just understood English directly, with no help. It felt like I had learned how to fly. That night changed something deep inside me. I realized English was not a puzzle anymore. It was becoming part of me. I didn't have to force it. I didn't have to break every sentence apart. I just had to trust the story, trust my mind, trust the process. My brain had learned how to think in English without me noticing it. And that's when I understood one big truth. Fluency doesn't come from studying harder. It comes from feeling the language deeply and living it with patience. In the beginning, I used to stop at every unknown word. I wasted minutes searching for meaning. But as I kept reading, I discovered something beautiful. You don't need to know every single word to understand. You just need to catch the heart of the sentence, the emotion, the action, the picture behind it. Slowly your brain starts to fill the missing pieces. It learns faster than you think. That is how your understanding grows quietly, like magic in the background. When I stopped worrying about mistakes, English started to love me back. It became easier, softer, more natural. I began to hear the rhythm in sentences. I could feel when something sounded right. I didn't know every rule, but I could feel the language. That feeling was stronger than grammar. It was intuition, the kind that grows from hours of reading, listening, and feeling the story. Sometimes I would test myself. I would close the book and try to retell the story aloud in English. Not perfect, but clear. I spoke about what I just read. The words came slowly at first, but they came. They were mine now. I could use them, and that made me proud. Each time I spoke, I felt stronger. I was not a student anymore. I was becoming a speaker. I realized that learning English is not a race. It's like growing a tree. You don't see the roots, but they're working silently under the ground. Every page you read, every line you understand, every sentence you whisper aloud, feeds that tree. And one day, it blooms without warning. That bloom is the moment you understand without translating. I wish every learner could feel that moment. It is the moment you fall in love with English for real. You stop worrying about mistakes. You stop comparing yourself to others. You start feeling free. You start enjoying English like your favorite song. And when you reach that point, no one can stop your growth. So if you are still reading word by word, don't worry. Keep going. Keep reading every day. Your brain is learning, even when you don't see it. One day, you'll be reading a story, and suddenly, you'll realize you understood everything. You'll smile, maybe cry a little, and whisper, "I did it." That moment will be yours. That's what Harry Potter gave me. Not just vocabulary, not just confidence, but that magical freedom of understanding without fear. And that is the real reward of learning English through stories. It's not about knowing the meaning of every word. It's about feeling that the language lives inside you. And when that happens, you don't just read English anymore, you become English. Chapter 4: Lessons from the Wizarding World. When I look back at my English journey, I realize that Harry Potter didn't just give me new words. It gave me lessons, real lessons about life, friendship, courage, and love. And through those lessons, I learned English in the most natural and powerful way. Every chapter of that book taught me something, not only about the story, but about how English feels when it becomes alive. I still remember reading a line where Dumbledore said, "It is our choices that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities." I didn't just read that, I felt it. I stopped and repeated it aloud. The words were simple, but the message was deep. That's how English became more than a language for me. It became a mirror for my thoughts. Each quote, each sentence carried an emotion that stayed in my heart long after I closed the book. I started noticing how people in the story spoke, how Harry used short, honest sentences when he was brave, how Hermione spoke carefully, with big words, when she wanted to explain something, how Ron used funny and simple words that made every scene warm. I realized that language is not just grammar. It's personality, it's feeling, it's rhythm. By reading their conversations, I learned how to sound real, not robotic. I started copying those expressions in my daily thoughts. Sometimes I even spoke to myself in the same tone. It felt fun and alive. The story also taught me everyday English that I could use. Expressions like, "Come on, you're brilliant. What are you doing? Are you okay?" They looked small, but they were real. They were the kind of sentences people actually use in daily life. And when I said them aloud, I felt natural. I was not just memorizing words anymore. I was speaking like a real person. The dialogues in that book became my secret practice sessions. I used to sit with my book and read one conversation again and again. I tried to feel the emotion behind every word. When a character was angry, I raised my voice. When someone whispered, I spoke softly. I wasn't just reading anymore, I was performing. And this performance taught me more about pronunciation, tone, and confidence than any classroom ever did. Another thing I learned was how powerful repetition is. The same phrases came again and again throughout the story. Don't worry, it's all right. Be careful, you can do it. Every time I saw them, I understood them faster. They became part of my natural speech. I didn't even need to think. They just came out of my mouth when I spoke English in real life. That's how real fluency begins, not by forcing words, but by living them until they come naturally. The magic world of Harry Potter was full of feeling. Happiness, fear, excitement, and friendship, all wrapped inside English words. And that's why the vocabulary stayed with me. When a word is connected to an emotion, it never leaves. You remember how it made you feel. That's why reading emotional stories is one of the best ways to learn any language. You don't study words, you live them. Sometimes, when I closed the book, I could still hear the characters' voices in my head. Their words echoed softly. They became part of my thinking. That's when I realized that stories are not only for fun, they are for transformation. They shape how you think, how you speak, and how you feel. So if you are learning English and struggling with vocabulary, pick a story that makes your heart feel something. Read it slowly. Read it out loud. Don't worry if you don't understand everything. Just focus on the emotion. Every page will teach you something new, something that no grammar rule can ever teach. Harry Potter showed me that English is not a subject. It's an adventure. It's a world of meaning waiting for you to step inside. Every dialogue, every quote, every tiny line can make your English stronger if you feel it deeply. And once you start learning like that, you'll never go back to boring lessons again. Because the truth is simple, when you fall in love with a story, the story teaches you everything. Grammar, vocabulary, pronunciation, confidence, all at once. And that's the greatest lesson I learned from the wizarding world. Magic is real, and in English, that magic lives inside words. Chapter 5. How Reading Became My Daily Magic Spell. When I first started reading Harry Potter, it was just a small experiment. I wanted to see if I could finish one chapter without giving up. But with time, something beautiful happened. Reading became a habit. It became a part of my day. It turned into my quiet, magical moment when the world disappeared and only English remained. What started as practice became my favorite time of the day. Every night, before going to bed, I would open the book. The pages felt like doors. The moment I began reading, my tired mind came alive. The sounds of the English words were soft, peaceful, and full of power. I didn't need to force myself. I wanted to read. Even when I was tired, even when the day had been long, reading that one chapter felt like lighting a small candle in the dark. It gave me peace, and at the same time, it made me stronger. I created a small rule for myself: read 10 minutes a day. No excuses. It didn't matter if I was busy or sleepy, just 10 minutes. And those 10 minutes started changing everything. When I missed one day, I felt incomplete, as if something special was missing. That's when I realized the truth about learning English. It's not about studying for hours. It's about showing up every single day. Even a few minutes of passion can do more than hours of pressure. Every day, I learned a few new words. I kept a notebook near my bed and wrote them down. But I didn't just write them. I tried to use them. I made sentences in my mind before sleeping. Sometimes I whispered them out loud. Sometimes I used them in dreams. Slowly, those words started to stay with me. They didn't feel like homework. They felt like treasure. Words like courage, light, promise, and freedom became part of my heart. Reading Harry Potter every day also improved my pronunciation. I started reading aloud softly, like telling the story to myself. At first it was strange, but then it became fun. I loved hearing the rhythm of English. I learned when to pause, when to stress, and when to let my voice flow. My confidence grew. My fear disappeared. I was not just reading a book anymore. I was speaking, performing, and living the story. The most amazing thing was how this habit changed my emotions. After reading, I always felt calm. It didn't matter if my day had been full of noise or stress. Those minutes with my book felt peaceful. English was no longer something I had to learn, it was something that healed me. I realized that reading was not only about vocabulary, it was also about building patience, focus, and love for learning. There were days when I didn't understand everything, but I never stopped. I knew that even if I didn't see results immediately, my brain was growing quietly, like a plant under the soil, invisible but alive. That thought kept me motivated. Every night, when I read one more page, I reminded myself, this is my magic spell. This is how I change. Soon, I started noticing small miracles in my daily life. I could understand English songs better. I could catch phrases from movies. I could speak faster and clearer. My friends noticed too. They asked, "How did your English improve so much?" And I smiled, because the answer was simple. I didn't study harder, I just read with heart, every single day. If you want to improve your English, you don't need a big plan. You need a small habit, a quiet time, a book that makes you feel something. Let reading be your daily spell, 10 minutes a day. No pressure, no fear, just love for learning. Because every time you open a book, you open a door, and with each page, you walk closer to fluency, closer to confidence, closer to the person you want to become. That's the real magic of English, the magic that grows one quiet night, one simple page, one small word at a time. Chapter 6. From Hogwarts to the Real World. When I finally finished reading Harry Potter, I closed the book and sat quietly for a while. I looked around my room, but it didn't feel the same anymore. Everything felt different. I was different. My English had changed, yes, but something even deeper had changed inside me. I felt more confident, more curious, more alive. It was like I had carried a little part of that magical world into my real life. I realized something powerful that day. You don't need a magic wand to change your life. You just need a book, a little courage, and the will to start. That story didn't just teach me words, it taught me the meaning of persistence. It showed me that growth happens slowly, quietly, just like magic in the night. Every page I had read, every word I had repeated, every mistake I had made, had built me into the person I was becoming. When I started reading, I couldn't even finish one page without stopping. I felt small and weak. But now, I could read full chapters with ease. I could think in English. I could express my feelings better. My mind was no longer afraid of English. It was excited by it. I started watching movies without subtitles. I listened to songs and understood them. I even spoke with people in English and didn't feel shy. That book had opened more than just my vocabulary. It had opened my world. I began to see English everywhere, on signboards, in conversations, in dreams. It was no longer a foreign language, it had become part of me. Reading Harry Potter had built a bridge between who I was and who I wanted to be, and I realized that learning English was never only about studying rules, it was about growing into someone stronger, more patient, and more confident. One day, I took the same book and read the first chapter again. It made me smile. Those words that once looked impossible now felt easy. I remembered how scared I was when I started, and I felt proud that I didn't quit. I whispered to myself, "This is what progress feels like." That small whisper filled me with energy. It reminded me that every learner, no matter how weak they feel today, has the power to change. I began sharing this story with my friends. Some of them said they were too old to learn English. Some said they didn't have time. I told them the truth. You don't need to be young or free. You just need to love learning. If you read even a few pages every day, the language will start to live inside you. You will feel it growing quietly, like light filling a room. Learning English through stories is not just about speaking better. It's about thinking differently. It's about finding beauty in words, courage in mistakes, and meaning in every small success. The real magic happens when you start believing that you can learn. Once you believe that, nothing can stop you. Now, whenever I see my old copy of Harry Potter, I smile. The cover is old, the pages are soft, and some words are underlined. It feels like a part of my life, a piece of my journey. That book didn't just teach me English, it taught me hope. It showed me that every learner has their own kind of magic waiting inside them. So if you are holding your first English book today, remember this: you are already on your way. You are already growing, even if you don't see it yet. Keep reading, keep feeling, keep believing. Your progress will surprise you. One day, you will close your book, smile softly, and whisper the same words I did. I did it. Because you will. You truly will. That's the real story of learning English. It's not just about grammar or vocabulary. It's about transformation. It's about turning fear into strength, and dreams into words that finally belong to you. And that, my friend, is the most powerful magic of all.